So pleased you're joining us. We have a lot to get through in the 60 minutes before we go off to Q&A. So I will go ahead and get started and just tell you all a little bit about us, which we are the Grandfamilies and Kinship Support Network, the first only technical assistance center on the families. We are run out of Generations United and run with 5 national partners, an array of subject matter experts. And really, our purpose is to provide assistance to the array of government systems out there in states, tribes, and territories, along with community-based nonprofits and peer-led nonprofits like we're going to hear from today. So if at any point you have any questions, please reach out to us. We have technical assistance specialists, whole cadre of subject matter experts who are here to help free of charge. So if you go to that link in the right and click on it for individual requests for assistance, we will get back to you within a few days. We do other things as well besides individual requests, which is these many webinars. We have peer learning communities like the one you're going to hear about today. And we have a very robust website with over 100 originally created resources that are meant to help you better serve the families. So this is our website, just to give you an image of what it looks like and the URL, and we're constantly updating it. So check back frequently. And today I am so pleased to present, to have joining us all these fabulous speakers. And I will let them introduce themselves more when they start speaking, but know that they are part of a learning community that we at the network launched with Tiffany Allen, who's an expert in building infrastructure for small nonprofits and helping them get supported a couple of years ago, because all 4 of these women, aside from Tiffany, applied for our kinship exemplary program status here at the network. And all 4 of them shared shared many common strengths and then common challenges as well. The common strengths being peers trust peers, right? Being right at the community level, and knowing the families and helping the families and not being a government entity and having trust within that community are all such just tremendous strengths for all of these 4 programs. But at the same time, they had fundraising challenges, sustainability challenges, infrastructure challenges, and so we weren't able to designate them exemplary, but we were able to provide them ongoing technical assistance with Tiffany through at least a year of working together as part of a learning collaborative. And so we're going to hear from all of the participants today, which includes Kathy Dial, who's out of Virginia, Karen Gillespie in Atlanta, Victoria Gray in Phoenix, and Angela Tobin, who works out of Ohio and other places. And of course, Tiffany Allen, who does this work. So it is my privilege and pleasure to turn it over to Tiffany so that we can learn about all their fabulous work together.
All right. Thank you so much, Anna. So I'm going to just give me a little grace so that I can show what's on the screen, everyone. Okay. 1 second, y'all. So I'm using a service, and of course, as you're trying to do something live, it's a little challenging. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming today. We're actually very excited to present the information we have. We're going to talk about how to build capacity for small and peer-led kinship organizations. Before we get started, I do want to clarify what we mean by building capacity. Anna talked about it already, but I want to make sure I clarify that. And then also what we mean by smaller and peer-led kinship organizations and why we chose this perspective for this webinar today. So when I'm talking about building capacity today, it's in the context of having the right infrastructure in your organization so you're positioned for funding. And one way to focus on that is what we focused on in the Learning Collaborative was our data and showing our impact, but also how to put the right structures in place to be prepared for fundraising. When we say small and peer-led, we want to focus on organizations that are grounded in their local communities. They tend to be smaller, and they're often run by or in partnership with kin. And so we just want to make sure you understand that this webinar is focused on that experience because that experience isn't always elevated in these conversations. But also, I want you to know that anyone can take from this conversation, anyone can pull from the principles that we're going to share today. So, our time today. We're going to focus on the things that are on the slide, but I'd like to introduce myself very quickly. As Anna said, my name is Tiffany Allen. I am a consultant. I've been providing training and technical assistance for mainly public systems on kinship care and policy and practice for a long time. But while I was doing that, I was also building a business called Boss on a Budget. I actually have a YouTube channel that teaches people how to launch nonprofits and how to fundraise from the ground up because everyone talks about fundraising when you have donors, when you have staff, right? But how do you fundraise when it's just you? And so I wanted to share that experience because I had that experience for myself as I was helping my partner launch his nonprofit. So today I have four lovely co-presenters with me. They're going to introduce themselves shortly as we go through the slides, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what we did in the Learning Collaborative and the Learning Community. We're going to use that interchangeably. And then I'm just going to share a little bit of characteristics that you'll typically see of small and peer-led kinship organizations to understand our perspective a little more. And then I'm going to actually walk through 7 steps to sustainability. The toolkit that will be released today includes those 7 steps. And so we're going to actually preview those for you today. It goes into way more depth in the toolkit. We're scratching the surface, but we really wanted you to hear the perspectives of the 4 organizations that participated in this so you can see how to implement these steps. And then we're going to do a Q&A and we're going to go deeper and talk more. So what did we do in our learning community? So it started out with an assessment, right? So I did an interview with each organization and I talked to them about their board. What are their current plans? What are you doing for marketing, fundraising? What are your partnerships like? Because I wanted to start from where they were rooted, their strengths, understanding who they were, right? And then from that, we developed some goals and developed a plan and we did one-on-one coaching. So we met about once a month to work on those plans to help push them towards their goals. We also did 4 trainings together. So those trainings were related to fundraising, how to use data to show your impact, how to manage a board, which is a biggie, especially for small nonprofits. And then also a part of that, we did some peer learning. So we did monthly group coaching where we all came together and we brainstormed, we problem solved, we talked different issues, compared notes, and all of those things. So just wanted to give you just a perspective of how we did our learning community. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I want you to see the lovely logos of the organizations that are represented here. They're going to share more about who they are, but I just wanted to say thank you um, for the ladies to come on today and share their perspective. It's not easy to talk about your challenges. It's not easy to put yourself on Front Street to share what it's like to grow and to be pushed to grow. And I want to thank them for being available and willing and open in this process because they do such great work in their communities. And so I just want to thank them first for showing up for the learning community, but also thank them for all the great work that they do in their communities and also for you all here today. Thank you for all the great work that you do in your communities. So, what is it like to be a small peer-led kinship organization? So, typically, and we picked a budget of $250,000 or less. And let me just say this, the word small in the context of small business is different. Some people think that small is a $2 million budget. Some people think small is a $50,000 budget. But and thinking about what is a typical, like a smaller kinship organization, we decided on 250,000 or less. That's typically the profile that we see of organizations that tend to be more rooted in the community. They're largely driven by one person or a small group of people, and that is typically due to an experience they had. And sometimes it's a negative experience, or they didn't get the resources or wish they had the support while they were going through the process that they were going through. And in turn, they wanted to help someone else. So a lot of times you'll see they're starting with that deep commitment to a mission to help other people. And it's usually a very small group of people or one person pushing that mission. There's also limited funding. So many of the organizations are relying heavily on in-kind or non-cash support, and they're not receiving actually a lot of money. And they're doing this on a volunteer basis, and they're working literally a full-time job, but not getting compensated for it. So we want to acknowledge the difficulty in doing that, the difficulty in doing the work every day, being committed, but not being compensated for that. Um, Also, they're highly connected in their local community. They often know where to find resources that other agencies may not be clued into, like government agencies. So they're often very well connected in their local neighborhoods, in their communities, and they often report anecdotal success. But that success is not often documented, or it's hard to show, or it's hard to explain to people why the work is so important or why it's so helpful for families. And that does make it challenging when it comes to fundraising and when it comes to obtaining funding. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to walk you through the 7 steps that you can take to build capacity to secure your funding. Um, and so we're going to walk through each one of these steps, and I'm actually going to turn it over to one of the ladies to share their perspective and to share more information, because we know it's so important to hear from people who are in similar situations as you. So I want to start with the first step, which is mindset. So you may be wondering, well, Tiffany, why is this first? Right? Like, why are we even talking about this? We're talking about raising money. Why are you talking about what I think or what I believe? And I'll just say this. I have been doing this kind of work since 2016, and I've noticed that one of the main barriers to people raising money is simply the belief that they can. So when you believe you can't do something, or you don't believe you can reach certain rooms, or you belong in certain spaces, then you limit yourself. But on the flip side, when you do believe something is possible, you'll take risks. You'll push yourself. So beliefs absolutely impact your thoughts, and your thoughts absolutely impact your actions. And I've seen this with countless founders I've worked with. What you believe about yourself shows up in your everyday work. So, any training that I do around fundraising, I always start with beliefs because it's so vital to your success. So let's go through some of the beliefs that I see, some organizations struggle with. And this may be your experience, it may not. But after working with hundreds and hundreds of founders, I've seen that it's important to push through some of these nagging, limiting beliefs so that you can free yourself to be able to really raise the money that you need to raise for your organization. So, first of all, you have to believe that your organization brings value. You really have to understand that. And the way this manifests is that you may not be a large organization, right? So you may feel like, oh, we're just a small organization. We're not doing enough. We just do this work here and there. But a lot of people don't notice us, or we don't get the recognition. So you may believe that you don't have value. You're not as important as other organizations. But the size or what people notice about you doesn't mean you're not impacting people. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't speak up in rooms. It doesn't mean that you're not enough. You really are. You are enough, and your organizations are so needed. And there's someone right now who needs your work. They need your perspective. They need your opinion, right? So you matter, and you have to believe that. The second thing, and this one is really tough, but you have to believe there's enough money. And I know that's hard to grapple with, especially in the environment we're in right now, when there's a lot of federal funding that may be at risk. But you probably hear people say all the time, resources are so limited. right? The state only has so much money to spend on kinship care. But there is enough money. There is an abundance of money out there. You can raise the money you need. Now, it may require you being creative or trying a different strategy. It may require you to stretch yourself. You may need people to help you along that journey, but the money is there. And so, what you believe becomes. So, if you don't believe it's there, then there's not enough money, right? So you have to challenge and push back on those thoughts that would say, there's just not enough resources for the work that we do. The resources aren't where you've been yet. You need to reframe that, right? Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The third thing I'll just share about mindset and your beliefs is that a lot of founders that I encounter or executive directors believe that they're begging when they're asking for money. So when the time comes to run a campaign or even ask your family and friends or just ask a donor for money, there's this nagging feeling that I'm begging for this. They think I'm asking for the wrong reasons, right? And I could do a whole training on this, but I'll just say that fundraising is you extending the opportunity for someone to do something that they naturally want to do. Giving is a joyful act. People like giving, right? And I'm especially talking about when you're asking from individuals. They want to help somebody. They want to use their money in a good way. Giving makes people happy. So when you're asking them for money, you're allowing them to do something that makes them happy. And when you hold back, you don't give them the opportunity to do that. That is not begging. And you know that there are people out there who could really use the services you're going to provide based on the money that you raise. You're not begging, you're asking on their behalf to make sure they get the services and the resources they deserve. So I just wanted to make sure we start there and that if there are any limiting beliefs that come up for you and challenge your ability to raise money or make you think it's not possible, I'm here to let you know it is possible. For the second step, we're going to talk about a strong board. There's only certain places you can go if you don't have a strong board of directors. And this is one place where many, many people struggle. It's an ongoing process to recruit. But you have to approach your board as if it's a privilege for people to serve. They have a legal and an ethical duty to serve on your board, and it's a privilege to be able to plan and make sure that the organization is successful and that it can be around to serve your community. So you have to set up processes that reflect that. You have to vet your board members. You have to do a search and recruitment process to make sure you have the right fit. It's really, really easy, especially when you're small, to lean on family and to lean on friends. But there's a point where you have to outgrow that and recruit based on the value that those people bring to your organization and what you need. So when you're thinking about your board, make sure they understand their roles, right? When you're recruiting them and vetting them, part of that process is communicating to them what you need them for, right? What they need to do. And that isn't included in that is fundraising. Make sure that they financially contribute. And I know that a lot of you are working with people with lived experience. So you may feel like, well, they can't give, a lot of money, but allow people to give what matters to them, even if that's $5, even if that's $20. Allow people the space and the power to financially sow into something that they believe in, right? And then when you recruit, make sure you focus on diversity, on different factors, race and ethnicity, gender, professional background and experience, their previous board experience and age. And I'm going to turn it over to Victoria to just share a little bit more about the board and why that's so important.
Thank you, Tiffany. Victoria, great. I'm out of Phoenix, Arizona, and my organization was started out of lived experience, getting involved with having our grandchildren brought to us and not knowing anything, services weren't available. And so from that, we created the nonprofit. And so it was really hard in the beginning because we didn't know. We didn't know what to do. And when it came to the board, it was so easy to just ask family and friends because you need to have a name on that form. But in the long run, you need to make sure you have someone that's actively involved in what you're doing. I had family members as board members, and they were actively involved because they were involved with the system either as kinship or foster parenting or whatever. And so we had a diverse as far as the system was concerned. But I didn't have the diversity in support. So it was all saying, I was a one-man team with a board, and it didn't make sense. So you have to be careful and make sure that the mission statement is everybody's mission statement, not just, well, I'm just here to help you. I'm here because you needed a name. Make sure that you get someone that's passionate. They don't have to be as passionate as you are, because I'm very passionate about what I do. But you do need someone who's willing to come in and help you fundraise, to help you keep notes, help with data, and those type of things while you're actively working with the families that you support. And so it's very important to look at the board and see who can really help in the capacity that I need. Sometimes your board member may be an accountant and they're going to look at the financial part, keep your taxes and stuff together. There's somebody that may be in the fundraising and know a lot of people who want to give, and they're looking for someone to give to a great project. And so those people are very important when it comes to fundraising. But you also have people that are keep notes, all of the different things that can help you stay focused on what you're doing. You need those board members that are backing you, that are there in support so that you're not falling all the time. Somebody that can catch you, somebody that can, even as small as answering the phone for you. It's what you need. You needed to just see, and you can't figure out what you need if you don't have goals, if you haven't set a mission statement, and if you're just running blind. And in the beginning, I was like that. I was running blind. I had a bad board and fundraising. I was like, Tiffany was saying, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to beg for any money. But being in this class with her changed my attitude on what was needed, how we needed to get things done. And I've made changes in my board. So that's pretty much it for me as far as board members are concerned. Just stay focused and make sure that your board is a supportive board in the areas that you need. Thanks, Tiffany, for all your help.
Thank you, Victoria. All right. So step 3 is around having a defined program structure. And one thing that I've noticed with nonprofits, especially smaller ones, that in order to message who you are and what you do, it's important to organize that into some structure. A lot of times you start organically and you see a need, so you create a program for that and you create a service for that, but it's not necessarily branded as a program or organized. It's just, oh, we do this, we do this, we do this. But it's important to organize the work you do into sets of activities under different programs. And that could be based on, okay, our program does food, and that's a whole program, or it could be a program based on youth. This is our youth services, and this is a program. It's how you want to define it, but you need to organize it. So first of all, you can talk about it and brand it in a way that you clearly understand how to refer to the work that you do, but it's also so important for budgeting. So if you have to write a grant for a program, you can write a program budget for that program. And also it's important to track your success. So on this slide, there are different areas you should be tracking and identifying for each one of your programs, like your target population, how you recruit, what are the different activities that you do in that program, what are the outcomes, and then how do you staff it? And I'm going to turn it over to Karen to talk a little bit more about this piece.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm Karen Gillespie. My organization is Generations Together. We're in Fayetteville, Georgia, And my program started out of lived experience. I raised my granddaughter from the age of 3 months, and now she is 24. So that comes with a lot of experience. But with that experience and you having a passion in the community just to help other people in the same situation that you didn't find yourself in terms of getting resources and services. So we started our program. And we started receiving caregivers as fast as we can put a structure together. So, with this cohort, I was able to go back, identify all of our key programs and services that we have provided and through our community, and taking that defined program structure has helped tremendously. It has helped us to identify our key populations by collecting the data that's needed for reporting, to getting that information as far as on how to recruit and strategize and how to get families and understand where they're at in their journeys. Some of the families that we serve, which I want to pull out this number about 80%. And I think that's key because we're working with not only the informal, but the formal families. So with informal families, they are our first touch point. We are their first touch point. So we have to make sure that we can design those key elements and programs based off those families. And when I'm saying that, it's because informal families does not have a navigator service. So we are their first contact. And so structuring our program has really helped us drive new community partners, drive detailed and targeted structure for them to participate in our programs and activities. Because what we do is ask those survey questions and getting all the information up front from those caregivers to make sure we're designing and putting things together. So once we do our outreach and recruitment strategies, we do a lot in terms of getting some referrals and working with community partners, agencies. We do a lot of outreach on social media, and word of mouth is a great process for strategy. The program activities, like I said, putting that into a structured program is based off what are the needs of the caregivers and the needs of the children. So that utilizing those services help these families and giving them the outcomes that they need. And I want to talk a lot about program outcomes. Program outcomes for us was a point that we needed to look at. So we had to go back and look at what data was needed in order to build that, not only to tie with our mission, but also for reporting. When we have our board meetings, I was able to go back and give them clear and defined information on how many families, how many activities that we're doing, everything that we can do to just kind of to make sure that we are focusing on our mission, that we are tying our program and services together, that we're looking at funding in a total different way in terms of how we're getting grants, how we're getting donations, how we're getting sponsorships. So I was actually able to go back, have a board, sit down with the board, have our meetings, and get them engaged. And the value of that is now our board can advocate on behalf of the organization. They understand our program, they understand our services, they understand the population, and then that helps them strategize for fundraising and community partnerships. So that's what I have to share regarding how that is. And also, it gives our staff a focus in an area of expertise on how we recruit, how we train, and how we get our volunteers.
Thank you, Karen. All right. So let's go to step 4, which is around tracking and reporting your data and your outcomes. So fundraising is a trust exchange, right? So people need to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and trust that you're equipped to make it happen. So an important key to this, to raising money, is having some kind of evidence to show that your work has been successful. So are you tracking the success for each of your programs? Can you show what changed as a result of a participation in your program? What is different about your programming than other organizations? What makes it special? Looking at your data can help you identify the answers to those questions. But I know that when we talk about data and we talk about outcomes, it can be really overwhelming. But in our training, when we talked, we tried to make it very simple. So focusing on the four things that are bolded on this slide, identifying the right measures, having logic models for each of your programs so you know what you're measuring and you have an understanding of what you believe the change that occurs as a result of your program. Collecting both types of data, quantitative and qualitative data, to show your impact because they both have value. Analyzing that data on a regular basis and reporting those findings. And what I'm going to do is turn it over to Angela, who's going to go through this some more and share her perspective regarding data.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. My name's Angela Tobin, and I'm the leader and founder of Kinship Caregivers Connect in Ohio. We recently got a $20,000 research grant in this past year, so it's been really exciting for us to do evaluation. And we're in partnership with Cincinnati Children's Hospital Child Welfare Research Lab. What has been really helpful is going from anecdotal to concrete, like showing our impact. And that's really what research does, so we can tell others what we're doing and why it's important. So when you're choosing those research measures, being very intentional, thinking about what actually are we hoping to impact and what do we want to look at. So putting a lot of thought into the measures that you pick out. And know there is plenty of measures and opportunities already out there, so you don't have to start from scratch. If you look at previous kinship care research, there are some quantitative scales that you can use that have been used with kinship caregivers or just populations in general that can be free and available to the public. So, for example, for stress, we use like the perceived stress scale that has been used with kinship caregivers. And there's like pretty much a research measure on anything that you can name. So starting with the tools out there for collecting quantitative data can be helpful, but then also thinking about how can I do this in our everyday operation? So putting systems in place. When you have an intake form, is there demographics that you can collect? Is there baseline data that you can collect? So really putting that into what you're already doing so it doesn't feel like an extra step. But then if you are planning on doing a formal research or evaluation process, choosing those measures, especially ones that have been validated, can be really helpful. So you're not starting from square one and you're using things that have been shown to be effective. And there are open access research articles out there as well. Qualitative data really can tell the story. So we want to give people the whole picture. That's why putting these two data methods together can be effective. So you can do focus groups, you can do open-ended questions. Something that was really cool for our study is we had open-ended questions and we were able to hire on caregivers as co-partners in research. So they went through all of the qualitative responses and they sorted them and they broke down themes and sub-themes to help us better understand it with their experience. And I should mention the reason I started KCC, like the other ladies on here, is also due to my family's lived experience with my parents and grandparents being caregivers. So I think anytime we can bring in that lived experience, it's always a benefit, not just providing their input in the research, but also being a part of that research process. Something that also helps with data collection, if it is something you have funding or a grant for, is to offer incentives. So we offer $25 gift cards for each time they answer the survey. Having a baseline survey and then doing it over time is really what can show that impact. And it's a great way to thank the caregivers and to keep them involved. So we had a $20,000 research grant, and that went to like the personnel costs, but a lot of it went towards the caregiver gift cards. Analyzing and reporting the data, this is also, of course, very important. And with reporting, thinking about how can I communicate this in an effective way to different populations. So using research can be very helpful when applying for future grants, but it can also be helpful in showing your impact in the community and showing your impact to donors. So maybe that's where you pull some quotes from your qualitative data. And there is also federal opportunities to draw down funding, which for us is far away. And for smaller organizations, applying for the Title IV e-clearinghouse may be far away as well, but I think it's just starting where you are and working from there. So we're hoping from this pilot grant, we could apply for a second grant that's even bigger, and just remembering that any research, any data is helpful to show. And really partnering with research organizations when you can. I even have like a background in research, but especially for us as small organizations, we're normally running the show, and research does require a lot of attention to detail, a lot of technical assistance, or technical work with statistical analysis and all of that. So I highly encourage you all to find a research partner, especially if you're partnering with universities. That's something you could potentially write into a grant, so their costs are covered as well. I found my research partner organization by reading a research article, seeing that they were in Ohio about kinship, and just reaching out to them. So I didn't even know them before that. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out and use others in the community to help. And as I mentioned before, just including caregivers, that has been such a big learning opportunity for me. Like, I was like, oh, I don't know, like if caregivers will like coding research, like that sounds so boring. But we had a great day together. They loved it, and it really helped shape our results in a positive way. And they were the ones like telling caregivers, take this survey, and they'll be helping disseminate the results as well. So I just encourage you to start where you are, start collecting what you can, but also look for external partners to help if possible, because research is important. It can just take a lot of energy. So thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to go to step 5, which is around proper planning. So there are a common set of plans that I always advise smaller startup nonprofits so that you're set up for success. So the first thing I want to talk about is your 1-year plan. And so as a part of a larger strategic planning process, you may even have 3-year goals, you may have 5-year goals, but I'm going to be honest, there are a lot of people who don't have the time and the resources for a comprehensive strategic planning process that can be very involved and be very expensive. And a lot of people just don't have that, especially if you're smaller and you're new. But having at least a 1-year plan focuses you. A lot of people ask me in the beginning, well, what do I do? You know, we are doing this program, but where do we even start? And I always say, well, what are your goals? What are the things that you want to accomplish for this year, right? And start with the number of people that you want to serve, right? How many people do you want to serve? Or how many programs do you want to implement? Are there any goals within those particular programs that you want to make sure that you achieve? And also, when you're thinking about your plan, don't just focus on programming, focus on the other pieces of your nonprofit because it's still a business, right? So think about administratively or within your infrastructure, what are goals that you have to strengthen that? Are there goals that you have around strengthening your board or, making them more tight knit or, strengthening those relationships? Is it around getting your compliance in order and all those things, getting an accountant? Or if you know you're going to start hiring or if you're engaging volunteers, how can you strengthen that process? And then I also want you to think about with your goals, fundraising and marketing. I lump those two together because they're kind of two sides of the same coin. But when you are thinking about your plans for the year, what fundraising are you going to implement? Fundraising is intentional. Money doesn't just knock on your door and say, hello, I'm here, right? So you have to be intentional about how you plan to raise that money. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how to do that with the fundraising plan, but ask yourself, what are the ways you want to grow in terms of your fundraising? Do you want to do more individual asks? Do you want to find major donors? Do you want to get into sponsorship? In what ways do you want to grow? And it's so important to engage your board in this process because it shouldn't all fall on you as the founder or as the executive director to do this. They are there to strategize and plan alongside you to make this happen. So that 1-year plan is essentially what are your goals and what needs to happen in the year in order to reach those goals. And a plan is not a plan in my mind unless you have a deadline on it, right? So when is it going to get done? What's the timing around that? And who's going to support that in terms of, your manpower, right? The second plan you want to think about is a budget. A budget absolutely is a plan. It's essentially your goals in numeric form, right? And it just tells you in order to accomplish what we need for the year, this is the money that we need to raise. So this is the money that it will cost, and this is what we plan to do to make up that cost. And I know if I were to ask this question for many of the organizations on the call today, how many of you actually have a budget? Do you have an operating budget? A lot of people would secretly say no. They may not admit it publicly, but I want you to know that this is a no judgment zone. A lot of times people don't even create an official budget until they have to like apply for a grant, for example. But I want you to understand that a budget is such a powerful planning tool because it helps you see the money that you need. And that frees you up to be able to say, in order to do the work that we want to do, this is what we need. And that gives you the freedom to then say to those who want to help and support you, this is what we need to make this happen. And you can't do that unless you really sit down and look at your numbers and figure out in an accurate way and in a realistic way what it costs to do the work that you want to do. So your budget will just show your expenses and your anticipated revenue for the year. And then finally, your fundraising plan, which is sometimes referred to as a development plan. And this simply details the amount of money you need to raise for the year and the different strategies you have in place to reach that goal. So 25% of your budget is going to be targeted for grants, right? 50% you're going to get from individual donors. Another 10% you may give from your board going out doing, strategic fundraising, whatever that is. It helps you break down from that big goal of how much you need to raise. Okay, we're going to take 25,000, we're going to raise this. We're going to put it in our plan and we're going to break that down. And then we're going to show how we're going to reach those goals within those strategies that we identified. Research shows that organizations that have a fundraising plan, even if they never pick it up after they finalize it, raise more money. So if that isn't incentive enough for you to create a fundraising plan, if you don't have one, please do. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and she's going to share a little bit more about her planning processes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kathy Dial. I'm the Executive Director for Kids, Kin, and Caregivers, and we are based out of Norfolk, Virginia, in the Hampton Roads area. And thank you, Tiffany. So one of the things that I noticed when we were developing our strategic plan and our planning for our agency, it's really combining everything that you've heard up to now. Our agency has an outstanding board that is made of community professionals plus Lex leaders in our kinship families, and we work together to develop and identify what it is we want to do for our goals for each year. In addition, we look at our surveys and the data that has been collected from our families. We speak with families directly, and we also go out and interview and meet with the community partners. So from that, we then identify what it is that we want to do, the services and the programs over the next 12 months. And then each of the programs that we've identified, we break down into parts, looking at the frequency, how we're going to market them, what we need in terms of staffing, including paid staff, interns, volunteers, other community partners. And then we also include what is it going to cost, not only in dollars, but also in in-kind donations. So we break down for each of our programs. And then we develop a budget over the year. And when we're looking at our budget for income, we look at what we have in reserves and what we need to leave in reserves. We also look at grants, looking at local grants or statewide grants that we can go for. If we want to have any special asks, for example, our agency has a program called the 25 Donors Club, where we have gone out and asked individuals to make a monthly donation so that it helps balance our budget, and then we have those funds specifically allocated. So that's part of our fundraising plan. The other thing, we have some great marketing strategy worksheets we've developed, looking at the source, the staffing, what supplies are needed, who's responsible, and the cost for doing it. So those are things that we're using for proper planning.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, so I'm going to do step 6 on my own, but if any of the ladies want to chime in after I'm done, please do so. But I want to focus a little bit on messaging. So I used to work for the Child Welfare Agency in DC, CFSA, and we had a saying. I worked in the data department. I'm sure you've heard the same thing, but we used to say, if it's not in FACES, it didn't happen. And FACES was our SACWIS or our case management system. And that's basically saying that if you don't document something, then basically it didn't happen. And it's sort of the same thing here with your nonprofit. If you don't share your work, then it's almost like it's not happening. But we know that's not true. Let me just say that. We know that you are absolutely doing work. You're doing a lot of work, but nobody knows. Most people can't see all of the hard work that you're putting in. But the first step to someone giving you money is them even knowing that you exist, them even understanding the work that you do. And to take it a step further, it has to matter to them, right? It has to matter to them in order to move them and encourage them to support. So you have to share why it's so important to be able to support your work. And you have to do that by communicating and messaging the work you do and the impact of the work that you do. So on this slide, I just want to share some important things you can do to share your work. One of the first things you should do before you do any fundraising is to create what's called a case statement. And in most cases, this is an internal document that you develop that basically makes the case for why your organization deserves support. And it's the process of you creating a persuasive argument for an intended audience around why your organization needs the money that it needs to do the programming that you have in place. So it talks about who you are, it talks about who you serve. What are the demographics of those people? What are the characteristics of the people that you serve? What are their greatest needs that your organization is in place to address? What do you do to address those needs? What are the outcomes? What are the anticipated outcomes of what you hope to achieve with your programming? And what's most important is why you? Why now, right? Why do you need support now? And why your organization over other organizations? And it's not about, saying I'm better than everyone else, but people have so many options to support many different causes. And you have to be intentional about saying to them why it's important to support your cause as well. So developing a case statement is a great place to start to be able to make that persuasive argument when you're fundraising, when you're doing your messaging for your nonprofit. Another important thing for you to do is know who your audiences are, and know what they want from you, or to even understand what their level of competence is around what you do. I have found, especially in the kinship care space, a lot of people don't really understand kinship care, especially when you say kinship care. They may not understand that terminology, but everyone understands what it's like to be raised by a grandmother or raised by an aunt or an uncle or a sister or a brother, because everyone either has had that experience or knows someone with that experience. It's a very, very common human experience. So it matters how you message that. If you go out and say, oh, support kinship care work, some people may have no understanding of that, but may very well have that own personal experience, but can't relate because it wasn't messaged in the way that they can receive. So it's really important to know your audience, know where they are, and speak to where they are. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk to them. One of the best ways to understand what a grant funder wants to know from you or what an individual wants to know from you is to talk to them, ask questions. Why do you think we do the work that we do? Why do you think it's so important? Let them tell you that. And that helps you to be able to message back to people who have a similar profile as them so that your messaging is more on point. It's also important to be consistent around your communications. So I know what it's like. You got your head down, you're doing your work, and you're not going to stop to take a picture or stop to describe what you're doing. Why? Because it will take away from the work that you're doing, and your work is so needed. But people need to hear from you because if they don't hear from you, then they're just going to hear from someone else or hear about something else. And here's the thing, people crave to know more. People are just nosy, I find. They want to know human stories, they want to know what's happening behind the scenes. So it's important for you to show up and be consistent around the work that you do. Take advantage of an email list, right? In a lot of ways, you can use a free service to start out to share emails with your list to talk about what you're doing, to share stories, to share the impact of your work, right? Write that into your processes to write down the stories or things that you encounter when you talk to the families that you serve. Show up as a thought leader. So, what I mean by that is, as a thought leader, you're sharing a perspective, an opinion that others may not know about or they're not exposed to. So, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Do you find that a lot of people are shocked or surprised when they hear stories that you share about the families that you serve? Are people clueless about what's really happening in your community, particularly around the needs of the families that you serve? Is there something about your experience in your role, whatever that role is, founder, executive director, or something else, that you find has been often misunderstood or overlooked? If you said yes to any of those questions, then you absolutely are a thought leader and you have something to share. So, what I mean by thought leadership is you sharing a perspective, an opinion that shows the expertise that you have in something. And it could be writing articles, it could be writing blogs, it could be going on webinars, it could be podcasts, YouTube channels, testifying in hearings, showing up in your legislative offices. Do what works for you, but make your voice known and share your perspective because people really don't know what it's like on the ground. People really don't know what it's like when you are working with families day to day, and they need to hear that from you. And you are in the perfect position to do that. And doing that signals that you're trusted and people give to things they trust. And the last thing I'll say is share your data and your impact. We've talked about that already, but um, you're impacting families in a positive way, and people need to hear that, right? So, our final step, step 7, seek partnerships. And I know many of you are great at doing this. So, I'm just going to let Kathy and Angela really take this one, but I'll just say it's important to do an inventory of who your potential partners are. And it's not just you as an individual, but your organization. So, your board has networks and is connected to people. So, it's important to understand what their networks are and think about at different levels, federal, state, and local. And there are examples of different types of communities you can tap into for potential partnership: faith communities, your government leaders, other nonprofits, local businesses, and the like. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy and then Angela to take this one.
Alexa, hang on.
Hi. So I'm really excited to share about 2 partnerships that have worked well for our agency. The first partnership is with an organization called Just Serve, which is put out by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What they have done is they've gone out to nonprofit agencies and had them identify projects that they need help with. Then they put them on the website. They share that information out in the community. It could be with schools, the military, other organizations, faith communities. And by doing that, they are able to recruit volunteers to help with projects. They've been a big asset to our agency because we have a program called Jack Frost Jubilee for our holiday project. And by being a partner with us, they make fleece blankets for us. They staff the program with volunteers. They're there for support. And the good part about it is they are nationwide. So it's something that you can reach out to within your faith community. The second partnership that we have is a program that we set up in Virginia with the help of Anna and her group. It's called the Virginia Kinship Convening Group, and this consists of Virginia Department of Human Services staff, several universities in Virginia, faith communities, public agencies, private agencies, nonprofits, all of us that are working together to help meet the needs and look at policies to impact the kinship caregivers we serve. And it's working extremely well. One of our accomplishments as a result of working together, we were able to have the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services establish grant funding through the Virginia Kinship, Virginia Respite Care vouchers for kinship caregivers that they may be eligible for up to $595 a year reimbursement for respite care. So those are two great partners.
Thank you, Kathy, for those examples. And I'll share some examples of partnerships we've done with Kinship Caregivers Connect. Part of our model, we're online and statewide. So we have 2 support group meetings a week, which sounds like a lot. Some of that is just like 2 different times for caregiver schedules. But we have half of our meetings as open discussion and then half of our meetings as trainings, learning on a certain topic from a community expert. Obviously, as leaders, like we can't be the expert at every topic. So having the support from other organizations has been amazing. And most of them have done it like for free. And I just give like a thank you gift card afterwards. So organizations are and people are really willing to give their time. And especially if they don't know anything about kinship care, when they come and meet our caregivers, it's like they instantly become a part of our community and get to learn about kinship care as well. So we have had organizations such as NAMI, Ohio State University, the social work program and counseling program, Triple P Parenting, Advocates for Basic Legal Equity, the Kinship Navigators program in Ohio. Like we have such a long list of organizations that will come and give presentations on different topics from like the legal system to education to resources in the community. So it's been very cool to have their time and welcome them into our community, and really is a great support to us as well. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to people. You'd be surprised how excited they are, especially once they meet the caregivers and then they're willing to come back as well.
Awesome. So I know we're very close to the end of this part of the webinar. I just want to say thank you again, ladies, for all of your expertise and your perspectives. And I'll just share some final words and then allow anyone else to say anything to wrap up. But leverage your strengths. Know that you all bring something to the table and use that. Right? You may be well connected in the community, so you can leverage partnerships. You may know a lot of people who care about your work, so you can do peer-to-peer fundraising to raise money. There are just strengths that you all have that you can leverage for fundraising. Be vocal. This is not the time to put your head down and work. Unfortunately, that approach may save some headaches, but it doesn't help bring funding. And people need you and they need to hear from you. Don't do this all by yourself. This is not a one-person venture. That is the quickest way to burn out. Engage your board in this process and go slow and be deliberate. The seeds you're planting now will pay off. I have a client who he started in 2019 and he has secured $500,000 and more coming this year because he kept his head down. He didn't take no for an answer, but it took time for him to get there. It took about 5 years to get there. So it will come. Just take your time and always
Thank you.
remember about this. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, and all of you wonderful ladies. And we look forward to hearing from you in the Q&A that follows. And if you'll go to the chat, you will see the link. And we're moving over to a Zoom meeting so that people can ask questions. They can come off audio and all of that. You can even come off camera if you want. I just wanted to share that this is the resource that was dropped in the chat. It is the result of all this fabulous work that these 5 folks have done together. So it's there for everybody to access for free of charge. And please stay connected with the network. and request assistance as needed. We are here for you. And then finally, we have another webinar in about 2 weeks on the kin-specific foster care licensing, the implementation progress. And we're going to hear from a number of states on that. So I encourage, and a tribe in Washington State. So I encourage you all to join us in the Zoom meeting. We will leave this open for a moment so that you can make sure and click on the link. You will see it a few items up in the chat. It starts with webzoom.us. And anyway, thank you again, Tiffany, Kathy, Karen, Angela, and Victoria. Really appreciate all you do for families in your communities and for the families in general. So I look forward to joining you in the Zoom meeting.